my Copic in the Craft Room friends. I am back for a second week on this adorable image from Angie, and I will put all of her links. She is a digital stamp artist, and I will put all of her links on the top or bottom at the front and back end of this video, so you can find this and other fun images from her on her Etsy shop. I think it's Angie Blom, and in fact, I know that's what it was because I was not sure how to pronounce that correctly. So we're going to do some different colors on hair. And the fun part about hair to me is, first of all, they can be any color these days. Obviously, I have mine blue, so or at least part of mine. So you can do all sorts of variations. We're going to do a couple that are a little more realistic, but maybe just tinted. No ombre hair today. So again, I think we'll go from kind of some lighter combos into darker. 4 little heads of hair is not going to show us the rainbow of hair, however. Hair can go on any skin color. I do try to make it kind of match that skin color so that it looks good. I think all of us try to make sure our hair color is looking good with what we have going. So I am going to do kind of a reddish tone on the lighter skin tone. It'll still look more auburn or more brunette here in the end, but we're going to go for kind of reddish tint versus that blonde brown. And she's got probably all of these little heads of hair are actually fairly easy to color, which is kind of fun. So if you're looking for good images to do some practice on, all 4 of these women have great potential for being good examples, ones that you can color over and over again. So I am going to go with a combination of E's that I think are going to get me more toward... These aren't necessarily combos that I've tried. I am just pulling markers out today. So these aren't necessarily ones that are favorites of mine. The first one was a YR31. There it is peeking in the corner. And the second one is an E13. I zoom in and then it's really actually hard to get that marker cap in there. So I apologize for that. I am filming this about a week before Valentine's Day. So hopefully all of you are getting little cards ready to send to friends and family for a little Valentine's Day. Honestly, this year I think it's more about sending love to people you care about than anything. So I'm going to make a real effort to send a few extra out, not only to my partner, but my husband, but to a few other people as well. So there's the E13. Let's lean it a little more toward red, shall we? I don't know. This might be too dark, but I'm going to go for it anyway. We can tone this down if we need to. This is going to be E07, and this is going to have quite a darker feel to it. Now, with the hair long and straight, we're going from the tips up, and we're coming from the part out, but we are in the length. We're going to have varying lengths of all of these pieces, the lighter into darker, just fewer flicks as we get darker. So not as many with the E07. One of the ones I like ending with is either E09 or E99. And I'm thinking I'm going to go back to E99 for this one. And then I'm going to bring that highlight color back and soften a little bit of this. So it's a pretty combination. I'm liking that quite a bit. I'm getting the hair right next to her neck. That's getting fairly dark, and really for the most part it's getting filled in with those darker colors. Hopefully what you're seeing and what I'm aiming for is this halo that kind of goes along the crown. So, which is harder on longer hair because that means you have to come all the way up and kind of all the way out across that sweep. Now I could do two softening effects. I could use my E13, that was the second marker we used, and come from the darkest out, and that would soften some of this interior. I'm going to try first though my YR31, coming back into some of these little spots and brightening up that highlight and also softening. Ooh, yeah, I really like that. And that just warms that whole color up. Kind of a fun combination. I will definitely make a point of writing this one down. It's not one I've tried before, so there is one. Okay, we're going to come across over here, and I think this one I'm going to go for kind of a cool black. So those, I will actually start those with like a blue violet or a blue. This is another one kind of similar to BV20, the BV31. So I'm going to go ahead and lay that down first. To me, I know it's supposed to have more gray in it, but to me it almost looks like it doesn't have quite as much. Who knows? And then I'm going to grab some cool grays. And with black, oftentimes I will actually start with my darkest, so C9. Remember, you can always add more. So I'm going to be fairly cautious with this first round, in particular with the C9, because that's right on the edge of black already. And then scoot down to C7. And I'm going to start at those same starting points and come out into that highlight. It's going to soften the C9. And so this is one of those things where I may have to come back and add the dark back in as I soften that a little bit. And just a touch of C5. I'm not necessarily trying to make those highlights disappear, but they might, like, almost, there might only be a couple little spots where I see that original BB. And I'm going to come back with that BB31. If you have a hard time doing black hair, this is the perfect, literally perfect type of hair to do this on. It's shorter, it's very distinct directionally. It's just long enough. It's not like a really short cropped haircut, but it's more like a bob style haircut that is short, has just enough, but it gives us that space to practice. So awesome hair to practice on. So that, I'm actually stopping there. If you wanted to, you could add a little more C9, but I'm afraid if I do that, it's going to start looking more like a black plastic helmet that she's got on her head, kind of black blob. So I'm going to leave it here. As it dries, if it gets a whole lot lighter, I could come back and add a little bit of that C9 and C7 back in. But again, I don't know that it needs it. So now we've got two curly hairs left, and we can do them in a couple of ways. I think this gal to the back definitely needs squiggles. I mean, her hair is drawn that way, so I think that's what we're going to go with. And I'm actually going to go with a really deep red on this one. So believe it or not, we're going to start with an 8.5, R8.5. So this is going to go really deep red. So yes, she has colored or enhanced her hair color. And this is going to go almost like to a deep burgundy, I guess, is a great way to kind of say that. And I haven't done this hair color in a really long time. So I'm sure I'm going to use some different colors here as I go through. But the first thing I'm doing is, for me, I'm kind of eliminating the white. I am going to have this base color of this R85, and then I'm going to go up from there. So I'm going to add a couple kind of deeper colors, and I'm trying to remember. Ooh, I know what it finished with. I am going to add these two first. This is an R59, so squiggles. It's kind of like a scribble. We do have to go right up against her or it doesn't work. So yes, you have to bump up against those lines. So slow down as you approach those other little heads and her face. If we leave this like hot pink border, it's going to look really odd. So for this first layer of texture, I'm actually going over the entire head of hair to kind of reinforce that curly texture. And then still with this color, I'm going to add a little bit more, just a touch, into those areas that are going to be the darkest. And it's happening a little bit on its own. Sorry, happening a little bit on its own because I've slowed down in those areas. But I'm going to go in and add a few little touches kind of around her face, next to her neck. So it's already dropping those areas back. The next color I'm going to use is actually V99. Now I know a few people that this is one of their very favorite colors, and that it adds a true punch of depth. It also has quite a bit of gray in it, so it cools down those dark areas. All right, so I'm coming right around kind of this edge of her face into that area next to her neck. As it gets out to the top, it's going to actually stay a little bit lighter, so I won't put, if anything, I'll do these little tiny broken pieces. All right. All right, there we go. So it should look a little bit darker, kind of framing her face and getting lighter as it goes out. So then you're like, okay, that's just a mess. I'm not really. So I'm pretty pleased with mine, but if you want to soften, you can go back and do kind of a light squiggly wash over the top of it. Not only is it going to get that underlying color one shade darker, which is going to help, it's going to soften some of that squiggling. And I know originally the colors we were using were, we had more layers to it. In fact, it had one of these like 5-6 color combos, but for today and that smaller head of hair, I'm pretty pleased with that. I like her a lot. So we've got 3 coming down to number 4. We're going to do a really deep kind of black brown. This is a color combo that I've used in the past for this, and unfortunately it has a whole long series. So I apologize in advance. It takes a little longer just because of that, except I'm missing some of my colors. No, I'm just looking around them. They're there. Dun, 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 shell. So, eliminating white to start. This is E43. I don't need this to be smooth. So I'm really just trying to eliminate the white. It's the goal. Here we go. Now, this is also going to be tight curl. So 2 options. You can do the squiggles again, or if you are more comfortable, you can do dots or a combination thereof. I'm going to do squiggles, but then I'm going to use some dotting at the end to add that next layer of texture and hopefully break it apart even a little more. So E44, we're going to go all the way kind of up through the E4s, and it's going to get considerably darker. So this one is just laying down that texture, kind of that scribbly squiggle. So my hand is going right, left, up, down in no particular order. For a lot of people, this feels very odd. I've got some curls, but I've also got some places where it stops and immediately turns the other way. So I've got little angles in there. There we go. So there's my first layer of texture. That's really just breaking that apart, getting that texture going. And if I keep moving on a hair this, like this little, I mean, you can see she's not a whole lot bigger than my thumb. Her face is under my thumb. So E47, all of these are going to go fast, and because they're going so fast, some of those colors are going to kind of bleed together and soften as they hit the paper, just because we're working with the ink as it's wet, which is always what you want. So we're going to keep this pretty tight in around her face into that part, and then as it comes up, I mean, this is framing her head, this is coming up and around her head, it will have a little bit of a lighter area and kind of at the edges too. So hopefully you can see it's darker in towards her face because I've kept them pretty tight together, and then as I come out, it's just barely, because we've got way more layers to go. We're going to start getting darker as it comes out and away. So you might have little broken pieces. This is where you could combine and do a few dots out there. But this layer still goes throughout the hair. It doesn't stop. It goes all the way to the edges. But we can just barely start to see. And remember, you've got that artistic license at this point. At any point you want to say, ooh, I like the color just where it's at. That's where you stop. Okay, E49 is next. Now we're going to really think about, okay, where is this going? Where do I want this to get darker? Right in about around her face, kind of bottom edge of her afro as it comes up, because it's going to be darker. Again, it's like it's that area coming down in next to her neck, even though it doesn't reach her neck. Can have a few little pieces coming out, so it still breaks it up. We don't want it to just stop. And then this is where I want you to kind of take a step back and take a look at this. Now, this is where sometimes I will stop. What I struggled with when I did kind of a larger hair piece, so it was a face that was actually the size of all four of these girls with hair, I felt like it was still a little too, it wasn't getting toward the end of closer to black. And so what I did is I took my cool gray, my C9, and that actually became, and you could do a W9 as well, but adding those grays in there, in particular the C9, cooling it down, adding that cooler tone, took it kind of a different direction and cooled the whole look. So it's not quite so brown. It's that deep, deep brown that's almost black. And that was my goal. All right. So we've got all of those layers and all of that texture on there. And then again, this is where you get to make some choices and say, okay, do I like the squiggles? Do I like the texture? What I'm going to encourage you to do is actually go back to your E43, which is that base underlying texture again. And this time, instead of just washing over it, I'm going to encourage you to try kind of slowing down and doing some dots. So this is going to add almost like a whole nother layer. It's going to soften a lot of those squiggles. And mostly that's the primary thing of what we're doing. But it's also going to bring just this other texture in with the rest of it as well. And I don't know, I feel like it's always fun to play around with kind of creating those textures and readjusting how you do things, looking for the best way to get somewhere. So anyway, just wanted to share another way to do all of that with you today. All right, let's see where we're at. So I think what I'm going to do, so that was about 20 minutes, which to me, you know what, we've been doing some long ones. Let's hold off there. So I will, if I have time, I will color this up, get their clothes done, and I will share that here at the end of the video. If not, I will make sure to get a little bit more of a close-up shot of these four. So I hope all of you have a wonderful day. Hope you find some time to do some coloring here in your weekend or weekend ahead. Have a happy, colorful day.